The Alpha Sessions with Ron Laver.
This is Alpha Sessions. My name's Ron Laver, and with me today is Leo Kelly G. Good afternoon, Leo.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. You're a singer-songwriter and a multi-instrumentalist. Tell me a little bit about, and I can see all the gear there behind you. Certainly got a selection of guitars. Tell me something about your sort of musical journey. You know, when did you start playing and what's the background?
Okay, so I grew up in a reasonably musical household. No one played any instruments, but both my parents were big music lovers. I've had Simon and Garfunkel, sort of Tears for Fears, Peter, Paul and Mary, sort of the 60s and the 80s kind of just burned into my DNA through many car trips and sort of tape cassettes. If you can believe it, we used to listen to tapes in the car back in the late 90s.
I remember that, yeah. I remember before there were no tapes.
Yes, we've got a few records as well, sort of like knocking about as well, but tapes were the main thing that we listened to. And that was, and I was always interested, I guess, in music as well, in terms of like, if ever there was a piano or a guitar at someone's house, I'd always sort of be gravitated towards it and want to play and sort of noodle around and just find some way of making something. So that sort of went on for the first 11 years of my life. When I started secondary school, my parents very kindly offered to pay for some piano lessons for me. And so I started taking piano with the wonderful David Sides, he was a classical pianist, but he was a very, very good teacher. And he started teaching me, just various bits of piano. The issue for me was that I memorized things before I could learn to read them. And so he'd send me home with a piece to learn. I'd come back having memorized it. I could play it for him. And he'd say, "Are you reading that?" I was like, no, I've just memorized it. And on this would go, sort of for weeks and weeks and weeks. And there's like 4 years I had in the end where he tried desperately to teach me to read music. And I sort of desperately tried not to learn, basically. We had a parting of the ways, which I remember really clearly, when I must have been about 15, I think. And I asked him, like, can you give me something that's a bit more, that's got some emotion in it, something that I can put some feel into it, by which I meant like a pop song, perhaps. And he gave me a funeral march. And so like, it's just, at that point, it was kind of like, with, two different ideas of emotion. We're just moving in different directions, clearly. So piano I did I still do now, but I played it sort of seriously. I joined a couple of jazz funk bands and things as well. I did a bit of sort of blues stuff for 4 or 5 years, sort of throughout until 16. And I changed school, and then I quit the bands that I was in the first school and then moved to another school. And then I picked up guitar when I was 14. I used to swim competitively, and we went away for a training camp for a week in Lignano in Italy. And when I came back again, my dad had just sort of on the fly bought me a guitar. Just one of the sort of the cheapy Argos ones with the strings like that far off the fretboard kind of thing, and it was a classical guitar. But like I was completely in love with it straight away. Really, I remember. Because I played piano beforehand, my theory knowledge and sort of my knowledge of the chords had gotten reasonably sort of literate, you could say. And so a lot of it to begin with was just translating literally what I could play on piano straight onto guitar, just in terms of strumming chords and things. UltimateGuitar.com is the best place for a beginning guitarist to go. So just spent hours and hours on UltimateGuitar.com, just picking out tabs and finding chords for all the songs I liked. The first proper song I learned, I'm ashamed to say, was Wonderwall, which I'm sure is the same for a lot of people, but it's become a bit of a meme now. And so that sort of I got big into Oasis. I got into Jason Mraz, Jack Johnson, just people who were sort of contemporaries at the time who were playing sort of around 2009, 2010, learning as much as I could. I started writing on piano first with these sort of horribly cheesy sort of love songs that you write when you're sort of 12, 13, and continued on to guitar for a couple of years as well. In terms of the writing, it's very, very cheesy songs to begin with. But I'd always the songwriting part of it had always been an interesting part to me. I think taking someone's, how's the best way to explain it? Songs give you a certain emotion, or they do for me, a certain feeling. They capture a certain moment, and for me, it was kind of selfish in a way that I wanted to have like an organic way to feel the emotion that another song made me feel. So if I heard a song like "The Bridge Over Troubled Water," for example, by Simon and Garfunkel, like part of me wanted to write a song like that, so I could feel the same thing, but sort of in a genuine sense because I'd written it. And so I had a lot of sort of, semi-copying other people's songs and sort of like writing in the style of other people, sort of trying to find something that I could, cobble together that was mine, basically. And so I wrote my first good song when I was about 15, I think, 14, 15, which was called So, which I believe you'll hear a little bit later, which was based off, it was a little bit of Lifehouse, which is a band that I was in at the time, and a little bit of, who's the other one? The Goo Goo Dolls by Iris, and sort of like taking various chords and sort of strumming together and cobbling it together. And so, that had been the first sort of, 4 or 5 years of my life. I started playing like busking. I started going to pubs and clubs when I was about 16, just playing various covers that I got into. I really got into Tommy Emmanuel, Andy McKee and John Mayer. They were the three sort of big guys that I really got into when I was sort of 15, 16, the time when you sort of sit down and, you have, I decided that was kind of what I wanted to do at that point. And so, to spend a bit more time sort of playing and practicing, they were the guys I really gravitated towards. And so I started playing their covers, sort of moving through originals. And this was in Medway, which is it's in Kent, if you know it. But they call it the rubbish heap at the Garden of England, at the end of the Garden of England. It's a bit of an interesting place to live. But what I found was I was really enjoying playing in the pubs and clubs and places, but everyone who was there, they've been there for sort of like 30, 40 years, so all of the open mic nights, they had 50, 60-year-old people playing. There was no one who was my age playing the music I was really interested in. No one had heard of Jack Johnson or John Mayer. Sort of I'd play this and I'd, oh, that was nice. Did you write that? No, it's a cover by this person. Who's that? And on and on and on. And then sort of it really took off when I got to university. So I went to the wonderful University College London. In 2014 I started, and we discovered there was a live music society there, and they put on this show which was called Rhapsody. It was the first time they'd ever done it, and it was basically a live music concert of various arrangements of different numbers and medleys of songs and things, and I was unbelievably fortunate to meet some people who are some of my best friends to this day still now, but just the fact that it was such a group of amazingly talented musicians in such a concentrated group. I think there are only about 20 of us, but we played this full concert, and it gave me an audience as well, I suppose. It just more people who are my age who are interested in what I was interested in. So even just playing at the open mic nights at university, you play something and people would recognize that, oh yeah, that's that song, and so I got to meet an audience that was kind of a bit more receptive to what I was doing at university, and that sort of got me writing and sort of doing a bit more, playing and practicing, and just playing to people that who were more willing to listen, I suppose. Fast forward so I spent a year in Berlin practicing again, spent most of my time in my bedroom as opposed to studying or seeing the wonderful city of Berlin. Just literally play guitar for a year in Berlin as part of my third year. I graduated in 2018, so 2 years ago now. And I came straight out into a function band. Oh, sorry, they don't like to call it a function band, but Truly Medley Deeply, which is it's a wedding and function band. And I was very lucky to get I auditioned for that and got straight in. So straight out of university, I went from studying like 2 weeks before my exam, played my first gig in April, did my exams, and then I was away doing 1 gig a weekend, sort of all the way through the summer, and through most of the autumn. I started playing in care homes as well. So I played for people for dementia care homes, sort of playing sort of all of the old stuff. Lots of Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles and Johnny B. Good and Chuck Berry and people like that. And I do a bit of, as much sort of session work and, well, as much as you can do to kind of cobble life together as a musician. Bit difficult now with no gigs and no weddings and no anything. But that's been my musical journey so far, sort of 14 years of history in about 10 minutes. There you are.
That's excellent. The fact that you were playing by ear by then, is quite a testament, really. I mean, is there a musical background in your family?
The only one that we know of is that let me get this right, I think it's my great grandmother. She used to be a pianist in silent theatres. Right. So back when you had, obviously, this was back in the 1920s, before they had film scores and anything, you'd have a pianist who was sitting there and she would you'd be watching the film with the audience and interpreting what was going on and playing music to fit it at the same time. So perhaps there's an ear for music there, but neither of my parents play any instruments. My grandparents don't on either side. And my brother doesn't either. So I'm the only one for like sort of 4 generations to pick up a guitar and play music. But it must have come from somewhere.
You mentioned earlier on the track So.
I must have been about, I think it was 15 or 16. I was in year 10 or 11. And I was very lucky to meet a group of musicians who were 2 years above. So I think they would have been in year 13. And they starting a band, and they were looking for sort of a guitar player and sort of a backup singer. And that gave me a chance to sort of to play with other people. I spent a lot of time sort of playing by myself, even in open mic nights and busking, I was playing by myself a lot of the time, and accompanying myself. So to play in a band was really, really exciting, especially because they were all older and so much cooler as well. And I wrote So in one evening, and I remember while writing it, it coming reasonably quickly. And there was one line in it that I was kind of nervous about, which was so what if I'm under the covers, heroes don't get up till noon. And I remember thinking like, is it really pretentious, is it too far, kind of thing. And then like I played it for my dad, and my dad was like, that's not bad, that one, kind of thing. And that was the first time he'd ever been like, that's a good song, kind of thing. That was the first sort of affirmation that I got from my parents that it was sort of a worthwhile thing to be doing. And then I remember playing it to the band that I was in at the time, and having this feeling that I like, as I was playing it sort of, and as I was singing the lyrics, sort of like I was feeling that they were good, if that makes sense. In that, like I was happy and confident singing them, and sort of not going through like, oh, like go with me on this bit, or kind of like, oh, this is a bit cheesy, but forgive me, kind of thing. I was sort of like, get the whole through, and the whole thing felt really, really good to sing. And so that was kind of the first song that I wrote, and that was the spark, I guess, that made me want to keep doing it and sort of keep writing to that kind of standard, at least for me. That when I felt the way that made me feel, I wanted to feel the same way with other songs, that sort of excitement, like, oh, even my dad thinks it's good, kind of sort of thing.
There's about 1 million different little tiny things inside my head. Each has got its own hypothesis about the other. It's not a battleground, it's never been. It's just the way that things get done, while I hide away a Sunday morning amidst the covers. Line up all the corners, and I'll straighten out the bends. I'll iron out the creases in the curtains. It's got to be a monthly thing, or else I'm gonna mess it up again. I bet you I could tell you that for certain. So what if I'm under the covers? Heroes don't get up till noon. So what if I'm not like the others? I'm not changing anytime soon. So there's about 100, give or take a dozen people I could recognize. Aside from them, to everybody else, I'm just a stranger. Walk along and with the optimist without a visible disguise. But behind the mask is where the people see the danger. So what if I'm under the covers? Heroes don't get up till noon. So what if I'm not like the others? Not changing anytime soon. So why try and change me? So why try and change me? why try and change me? So what if I'm under the covers? Heroes don't get up till noon. So what if I'm not like the others? I'm not changing anytime soon. So what if I'm just like my brothers? Anyone else, if that's true? Well, I won't be mistook for another. I'm not changing anytime soon. Not changing anytime. Not changing anytime. Not changing anytime soon.
The Alpha Sessions with Ron Laver.
When I knew I was going to be interviewing, I started, obviously catching up on social media and watching YouTube videos and things. And I'm thinking, well, I can't categorize this, particularly your YouTube videos. I mean, you do a lot of covers online. I see a little note in your bio that, Lonnie Donegan, Mrs. Mills, George Formby, you'll play all that, which of course you've got to if you're playing in care homes. But that it's just you've just got a real good feel for music.
Yes, I've been very fortunate in that I've been given it's. I don't want to say like it's a gift of sort of like having an ear for things, but it's kind of like I did a lot of work on musical theory as a piano player, and so after a while, I think you just start to be able to hear certain chord changes and certain things in certain keys, etc., etc. So I don't have perfect pitch; I have sort of reasonably good relative pitch. For the people at home, that means that if I hear a note and then they tell me what the first note is, and then they play another one, I can work out what it is from the first one. Whereas perfect pitch is if you get any note, people can just say, yeah, that's an A, that's a C, that's a D flat, etc., etc. I can't do that, unfortunately. But I think the other advantage is that obviously nowadays with music, a lot of the same harmony is used, a lot of the same chords are used. There's the whole criticism that that the 2000s with the same 4-chord song covered by various different people, which harmonically you could say is kind of true, but at the same time there's a lot of other things went on as well in terms of bringing in different influences and different rhythms and different artists and different styles and genres. But yeah, I guess like through playing over the years I've developed sort of a bastardized version of musical theory, I guess, which allows me to pick out songs and sort of work out what's going on in them reasonably quickly.
In my time, it was the 12-bar blues that, I can play that, but I can't play much else, And if it falls out of that, if they throw in a fourth chord, I'm lost. But so yeah, I understand what you're saying, but even so, I do think it's a gift to some degree. But obviously, you've worked hard on it as well. So when you're writing your own material, which you do, obviously. How do you go about it?
So for me, it tends to vary quite a lot. for most of the time, it's usually something on guitar first or something instrumental. I like to have some sort of harmonic backdrop before I start working out words and lyrics. I think also having recognizable or memorable guitar parts is quite important in my own writing. And so if I can stumble upon something that's reasonably, that has some sort of groove to it, has a nice melody or something that people can latch onto, for me, that kind of is worth pursuing then, as opposed to if I was just, say, strumming chords in a given rhythm, like that doesn't excite me enough to carry on if I write it. So it normally starts on guitar in terms of the song and the rhythm and the harmony around it. And then in terms of the words and the lyrics, they sort of come in dribs and drabs for me, in that I have various sort of lines, or I have a list of songs on my laptop actually of just titles of things that would be cool to write a song about, and sort of as the words and phrases sort of come as I'm driving in the car or walking around or anything, they just come to me whenever. Then it's kind of like when I get enough of them sort of like in one particular thing, it's like, okay, I can sort of have enough to sort of write a song, and then like, I have a guitar part over here that I've been noodling around, and then sort of I can sometimes marry the two and they go quite nicely together. So it's a lot of the time it's kind of it's getting a bank of both things of piano riffs, guitar riffs, drum riffs, etc., and then a bag of lyrics, and then sort of like copying and pasting them together when they feel right.
Doesn't sound then like you're the sort of person that says, right, songwriting day to day, lock myself in a room and I got to bash out a tune. Is that not for you, or do you do that as well? I was having a really hilarious conversation to my friend about this, the wonderful Jonathan Blake, who's also an artist. If anyone gets a chance, check him out on Spotify and all streaming platforms as well. But we were trying to do a bit of collaborative writing, and I'd made up a guitar riff, which I thought was quite nice, and he agreed it was all right as well. And I was saying to him that, I haven't written anything for ages, like it always takes me ages to sort of sit down and then sort of, like to really, in terms of the lyric writing, and in terms of getting sort of words to flow together, the rhythm of words is something that's really, really important, and sort of having sort of interesting themes, interesting topics, just things that aren't kind of, for me, they take a bit more sort of thinking, and sort of like I'll come up with a lyric and I'll sort of tweak it and mold it and rip it apart and put it back together in different ways, before I'm absolutely happy with it. I always like, in terms of my lyrics, that if I can sort of, without having any words to them, sort of I can read them and they read as poetry, in that, like you can read the rhythm and you can read it and it rhymes as it goes through, as opposed to sort of claiming I'm some sort of Shakespeare or anything, but just like, if you can read it and you can see where the rhythm and the beats fall as you're reading it, then like for me, that's, then I'm sort of happy to then put it out into the world. But I was saying this with my friend Jonathan, we call him JB, my friend JB, and also it takes me ages and ages, and then that night I sat down and wrote a whole song, and that very rarely happens to me. But so it literally can be, it can be a line, it can be a verse, a chorus, or I can write a whole song in an evening. Like I wish there was, some sort of way of like bottling it, or saying, like I'm going to be really, really productive on this day, on Friday, so I can sit down for 3 hours and write 2 songs. But it just doesn't work. Unfortunately, it is a craft though. I think it's one of those, like, I think a lot of people say that that you have a gift for songwriting, you have a gift for guitar playing or things, but it's kind of like, it is something that you hone. And after a while you start to work out like, okay, this is a good lyric. This is a good idea for a song, or I'm just pursuing this because, like it's not worth pursuing, etc., etc. Like I don't want to finish this song because where it ends up, I know I'm not going to be happy with it or be comfortable performing it, kind of thing. So it's definitely a craft that you need to hone as well, I would say. I understand you've got an album that you're putting together at the moment.
Yes. So the album is going to be called The Boy Who'll Forever Be. The first EP that I have on Spotify and Apple Music and absolutely everywhere, was called Under a Blue Sky. And that was just a collection of the sort of the 4 best songs that I'd written by the age of 18. It took us a while to actually record it and release it.
Including
in terms of
So.
Yes, including So as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they were, that was just a collection of 4 songs. Sort of it worked in that, the the EP fit together, and thematically it sort of went from, you know, happy to sad to all right to sort of happy again, and it did that kind of like thing. But because they were sort of randomly selected, they were just written on completely random topics. This time I wanted to have something that was a bit more themed and had a bit more of a focus to it. So the idea of The Boy Who'll Forever Be was to be sort of a kind of a coming of age album, and just sort of thinking about, you know, going from being a teenager and sort of having that kind of rosy view of the world that everything's going to be great, and like, oh, I'm going to start out in music and in 2 years I'll be a pop star, etc. You know, which obviously hasn't happened yet. And you know, just the way your perspective changes, you know, just from the age of say 20 to 25, sort of the things you start thinking about in terms of, you know, you start going away from sort of going out and with friends, as you know, to, well, in my case, marriage, you know, getting a house, and just sort of thinking about the various you know, things that change in terms of the bits that you regret, the bits that you don't regret, like whether getting older is a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. You know, in some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. And so it was loosely themed around that idea. And so I just wanted to kind of sort of encapsulate that period of my life in an album, if I could possibly. So it's going to be 12 tracks. So it's a full LP as opposed to an EP. And when we get a chance to get back into the studio and start recording, that'll be out hopefully as soon as possible. But obviously there's just no knowing when that's going to happen at the moment.
And you've done a live track for us, London Wonder. Yes.
So London Wonder, that was the one song that I wrote while I was in Berlin, strangely, away from London. But Berlin's a fantastic city. It's definitely something that I'd recommend going to anyone who gets a chance. But I remember walking, I was with my fiance at the time, and we were doing the whole long distance relationship thing for the whole year. So it'd be sort of 6 weeks away, one weekend back, 6 weeks away sort of. And one of the weekends that I came back, we came to London. She was at university at Royal Holloway over in Windsor. Well, actually in Egham, but close to Windsor, if that's a nearer reference point. And we come into London for a night out, and I remember walking along the South Bank and just sort of comparing it to walking along. It's called the Spree, which is the main river that runs through Berlin. And there's something about London that no other city that I've been in just has that kind of magic about in one way or another. You know, for good or, you know, for better or for worse, London Wonder was very much about kind of, you know, the thrill of sort of living in a big city and sort of like the seductive nature of it in places, but also about the way that kind of living in a city, how it changes you. Like I've come from living in Medway, which is like, it's a built-up area, it's not a small place, no. But like city life is very different to any other kind of life, you know, that I've been fortunate enough to live so far. And so it was just about, you know, sort of the good parts of living in London, the bad parts, and then sort of but the fact that no matter what seems to happen in London, there's always that, you know, there's always the South Side, there's always Big Ben, and there's always these wow factors when you see it, and there's always this allure of living in a city that I sort of wanted to capture in the song.
It's a matter of fact that there's a part of me distinct full of the drizzle, like a wrist half extinguished on the asphalt, and another part in love with the lights that set the water alight. And it's a matter of fact that there's a part that knows the city's like the cigarette you want once in a while until you just can't quite remember what your life was like without it. Try as I might to hear the lights, I think you never really took to taking 2 shots of coffee in the morning. It's on the body that begrudges the grudge before the break of day. Cause it's a matter of fact that there's a pretty contradiction in this ever-changing concrete that permanently stains your ways. But every time I leave it behind, half of my heart seems to hang on the skyline, and I can't seem to sever my soul from the thumb of the breeze. Is this love, or is it just London Wonder? Took line and sinker me slightly. And it's a matter of fact, I know a part of me will never be a fan of insignificantly making up the face count, despite the other that's a friend to the feeling that you're part of the crowd. But if I try to go back, I know a part of me forever just another kid to sail up to the sky and lose his way in the clouds, instead of breaking up above to the sunshine. Maybe its hope. The boy of 17 could dream he'd be the only kid to conquer all the cracks along the pavement, just to wake up with his head to the grindstone at 22. Cause it's a matter of fact that I'm a matchbox in the million, trying to find a little fire just to show the world he's flammable. But every time it's all on the line, caught on a riptide of rubies and diamonds, suckered in by the splashes of gold on the shores of the street. Is this love, or is it just London wonder? It brings me right back to believing. Out of reach, and I fall asleep wondering why. And some nights I wake up at 3 with my dreams burning holes in my eyes. And some nights I fight with my sheets, twisting my way through the night. But as sunrise dims the headlights, every time I'm making my mind, I know in my heart I couldn't leave if I tried to. And I can't think of anywhere else where it's better to be. Is this love, or is it just London wonder? It's finally brought me to see right where I'm supposed to be.
The Alpha Sessions with Ron Laver.
Could we talk about how it's been for you in lockdown? How have you coped? A lot of, some people are revelled in it and got loads of things, projects sorted. Other people have just been depressed and not wanted to do anything. How was it for you?
I think it's a bit of both. So when did we go into lockdown? It was the end of March, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I had our last wedding that we did for the function band was as we were driving up to Lancashire. We had the announcement on the radio that the UK is going into lockdown. So sort of like as we were driving back, I was like, okay, that's that for a while then, which is sort of my main source of musical income, sort of playing function work. And obviously care homes were a no-go as well in terms of spreading COVID and not wanting to kill the entire house that I was playing in, if possible. And so in terms of music, there's been very little in terms of like actual musical work, but it's given me a really nice chance to sort of sit and write. And my YouTube channel, which I'd sort of neglected for 4 or 5 years while I was at university, it's given me a chance to sort of start putting things out there instead. I've started doing a one-man band series on YouTube where I'll record and play every instrument to a given song, and also cut the video together so it looks like there are 6 of me in one room, so sort of playing at once. So I've done The Sound of Silence, we've done Banana Pancakes, Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears, and I did a tribute to Sam Lloyd, who was Ted on Scrubs, if you've ever watched Scrubs. He was the lawyer in that, and he very sadly passed away this year from a brain tumor. But he had an a cappella band, and so I did a 4-piece a cappella thing, just me doing all 4 bits as well. So in terms of music, it's given me a chance to do a lot more of that stuff, which has been really good fun. And then in terms of work and everything, I'm very, very fortunate in that my dad works as a handyman, as a property developer. And I've been doing that sort of on and off since I was about 14, painting, decorating, plastering, electricity, etc., gardening. And so I've just been taking as much of that as possible, really, in order to keep things going. I'm actually getting married in October, and so we've been trying to sort of save some money together, and this year was going to be absolutely fantastic because I was going to have a big summer of work and it was going to be great and all the money was going to be there. But we've made ends meet and it's been fine. So I've been one of the lucky ones, I'd say. Very lucky indeed.
I must have, you mentioned the one man band things you did on YouTube, and I think it was a Jack Johnson cover, Banana Pancakes, and I watched it, and it was one of the first of yours, it was the first one-man band of yours I'd seen, and I thought it was a group, in my defence, I was watching it on the Facebook channel, and the definition wasn't great. But it took me a little while. I thought, oh, that's good. There's a guy playing. Oh, and then someone else has just walked. I mean, it was cut excellent. I mean, the point I'm making is it wasn't, it was excellently cut, because nowhere along the line did I realise that it was you, just until I think towards the end of the song, I started looking. Then I went to the YouTube version, which was in better definition, and then I could see it was the same face in all of them. But it was excellent. And as you say, yes, you've done quite a few of those, haven't you? The other thing that you mentioned there that also I noticed was you did you were playing. I think it's what you've called your first ever a live performance of one of your own songs on YouTube, Breakaway.
Yes.
I think you sort of said, I'm just trying this with the wedding ring on to see how it plays on my guitar. I thought that was a subtle way of you sort of saying, I'm getting married. Which of course you obviously are. So when's the wedding now then?
Oh, so it's been a bit of a roller coaster. Yeah. Well, we're in a bit of an interesting situation at the moment. The big wedding that we planned sort of October last year was set to be the 21st of December this year. It's going to be in the Winters Barns in Canterbury, which is an absolutely wonderful venue that we absolutely fell in love with when we saw it the first time. They've said, obviously, with the new regulations, you can't have more than 30 people, and they're changing it all the time in terms of you can have food, you can't have food, you can have live music, you can't have live music, and it's moving around. And so we've decided that we're most likely going to postpone it to a later date. The issue is that because obviously everyone else is having the same bright idea that we'll probably postpone for XYZ reasons, the venue has said that we can't postpone until 3 months before the wedding. So until the 21st of September, we don't get the window to then choose another date. And so we basically just got to wait until then. By which time sort of, the same date next year may have been used up, it may be gone. So we're sort of in a bit of a tricky situation in terms of that. And sort of loads of people have been asking about booking accommodation. We're sort of like, we can't say for definite yes or no yet. So that's a bit up in the air. But then we've scheduled a smaller ceremony on the 17th of October, where it should just be close sort of friends and family. So that we can actually be married, because obviously we've been, my fiance and I, we don't live together either, unfortunately. Right. And so in terms of lockdown, we, for the first 8 weeks, we couldn't see each other either, which was a nightmare as well. And so we were sort of thinking, at least if we can be married, if we go into lockdown again, then we'll be together as opposed to having to separate and socially distance and do all of that, which was a bit of a faff, to put it lightly.
I think one more question for you before we go. It's something we like to ask everybody. Forgetting COVID and everything for the moment, I know you can't, but it would be nice to. Phone rings and it's a promoter. Wants you to do a gig, and you can pick any venue in the world. What would you think you'd go for? Oh
gosh. That's a good question. It's kind of it's a tricky question in that I think as an artist, I have a 5-piece band, which is just to name Johnny Chung, Bethany Graves, Alex Marshall, and Charlie Zhu, all fantastic musicians. But as a 5-piece band, sort of like we've played, like I almost feel like I haven't even thought about sort of the really, really big venues to play in, if it would be cool to play, sort of, like Red Rocks in America or like the O2 or Wembley Stadium or something like that. But a gig as an indie artist at the moment that I'd really, really love to play would be something like the Camden Assembly, which is sort of a 300 capacity venue. And just to have even that many people sort of like, a packed out venue and playing my songs and seeing people singing the words back, because there are a lot of words in some of my songs as well. So, if you get to the point where someone can sing them all back to you, you're obviously doing quite well for yourself. But yeah, the Camden Assembly or something like that would be absolutely fantastic to play if we get the chance.
And if you got to get an artist, you could pick any artist in the world to collaborate with you, not just be on the bill, but perhaps sing with, and who do you think you'd go for?
Oh my God, so many. In terms of So my real idol growing up was John Mayer. I discovered him when I was about 14, and he was sort of the first male aside from my dad that I kind of sort of like, I want to be like this kind of thing. And it was literally like everything about him was, I want to be like this sort of person. So to be able to meet him and play on stage with him would be absolutely fantastic. But in terms of songwriting, if I ever had the chance to even get close to playing with Paul Simon, that would be an absolutely unbelievable experience. That would be, one off the bucket list to say that I've played, I've even stood on the same stage as Paul Simon, let alone play, would be absolutely fantastic.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do about that. I must say too, you're very generous about your father. I've never heard my son say he ever wanted to be like me. But
he's a very brilliant man. One of the smartest people I've ever had the fortune of meeting.
Oh, that's nice.
So credit where credit's due.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's nice. Okay, well, just before we go, have you got any gigs lined up potentially? I know it's difficult at this sort of point even to be able to say, yes, I've got a gig, but will it go ahead? But anything planned in that direction?
So yeah, that's absolutely right. In terms of you can book a gig, but then like in terms of the change in government regulations, there's no way of knowing what's going to happen. But as it stands, we do have a gig. It's on the 13th of November at the Rocksteady in Dalston. It'll be my full band, so all 5 of us playing some new material as well as some of the classic stuff off the Under a Blue Sky EP, which is out at the moment. And yeah, if you guys enjoy sort of a mix of John Mayer, Paul Simon, Tommy Emmanuel, and various other influences, feel free to come along and watch the melting pot on stage.
Yes, and you mentioned there your original EP, and is still available on iTunes, Spotify, and quite a few other services, I expect. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they go? What's your social media platforms are you on?
So I've been quite fortunate to have a surname that nobody else seems to have except my 4 family members in the whole world. So it's Kelly, as in Kelly, with a hyphen GEE, Leo Kelly G. And if you stick that into Google, you'll find most places. But it's Instagram at Leo Kelly G without a hyphen. Twitter is at Leo Kelly G without a hyphen. Facebook is Leo Kelly G Music, again without a hyphen. And then YouTube is Leo Kelly G Music as well. So it's very, very easy to find. If you can spell Kelly G, then one of us will pop up, and hopefully, with any luck, it'll be me.
Okay, well, thanks, Leo. Thanks for sparing some time for us today. And maybe when all this is over, and perhaps when your new album is finished and ready to hit the streets, you'll maybe come in and see us in our studio in Stanmore.
That would be absolutely wonderful. I'd absolutely love that. And thank you so much for sparing the time to interview me as well. I really appreciate it.
There's no problem at all. We'll keep in touch.
I look forward to it.
Begin to bend because you want them to. You're fighting in a war that's never gonna end because you don't want it to. Lights up, head down, it's too uncomfortable. You sit up, turn around, you can't sleep because you're telling your friends that you're perfectly lonely. Your head thinks excuse to stop you crying when you realize the truth. There's never ever gonna be such a thing as perfectly lonely. becomes your friend, 'cause you don't want it to. And you can't go back to where you were before the end, 'cause you don't want you to. Lights up, head down, so uncomfortable you sit up, turn around, you can't sleep because you're telling your friends that you're perfectly lonely. You had things, excuse to stop you crying when you realize the truth is never ever gonna be such a thing as perfectly lonely. Maybe it's not everything it's supposed to be. Maybe you just want what you can't have. Maybe it's not everything it's supposed to be. Maybe you just want what you can't have. Maybe it's not everything it's supposed to be. Lights up, head down, it's so uncomfortable you sit up, turn around, you can't sleep because you're telling your friends that you're perfectly lonely. You hear things, excuse to stop you crying when you realize the truth, there's never ever gonna be such a thing as perfectly lonely. Lights up, head down, sit up, turn around. Lights up, head down, sit up, turn